Hey everyone, welcome back to the Live with Audacity podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Stewart, and you're listening to episode number 32. It is completely, totally amazing to me that nearly every single week I get to talk to someone that I really and deeply connect with. Today's episode is no different as I get to talk to productivity specialist and business coach Theresa Cifali. Theresa is a recovering workaholic who has built 4 successful businesses over the course of her 32-year entrepreneurial journey. What's wild is she didn't learn that success comes more from doing the right thing at the right time than from doing everything right until she was on her 3rd business and found herself working 16-hour days. Her own frenzied path led her to discover which actions were essential to the growth of her business and which she should let go or get outsourced. Now she has the freedom and flexibility that makes her so happy. As you will hear in our discussion, there's lots of different ways you can make your time work for you, but you must become hyper aware of how you work best, when you work best, and how to focus on the things that move the needle the most. Let's dive in. You're listening to the Live with Audacity podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Stewart. Audacity is defined by Merriam-Webster as intrepid boldness or disregard for normal constraints. And that's exactly what we have here. The Live with Audacity podcast is aimed at giving you the courage to explore your someday dreams, do things your way, and start making things happen in your life right now. I'm a mama of 4 kiddos ranging from college student to kindergartner, wife to a high school football and track coach, and a multi-passionate entrepreneur. Together with my guests, we're going to teach you how to live with audacity and intentionality, discover and utilize your unique skills and talents, and step into who you are meant to be in order to make your someday dreams a reality. Are you ready? Here we go. Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning back into the Live with Audacity podcast. I am so excited. Today I have Theresa Cifali here, and we are going to talk about all things productivity. I am really excited about this because actually we were just talking about how not hard, just time consuming that raising a business and raising kids can be. So I'm really excited to talk to you about how we can make that easier on ourselves. Theresa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Melissa. I am so excited to be here with you today.
Okay, so let's dive in to all the things. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got started in this business, because I know you've had a couple, correct?
Oh, yeah, I've had a pretty long entrepreneurial journey. My very first business I started in high school, believe it or not. I sang professionally for 25 years, which is kind of like a little nugget most people don't know about me. I
I
retired
love
from that a
that.
few years ago, but it was a lot of fun. It was really awesome when I was in college because I was making good money. I could make my car payments and buy books and mostly I worked on the weekends, so it didn't interfere with school. And it was just a really great, fun thing to do. My husband and I met that way. And we gigged together for many, many years. And then, while I was going to college, became a teacher. And I was still doing gigs and teaching elementary school, which was loads of fun. And then my life changed when my daughter came and my oldest daughter was born, and I was so excited to be home. That's all I ever really wanted to do. I wanted to be a mom, and
Hmm.
I wanted to raise my kids and stay home. But very quickly into that, I was so unhappy, and then I had tons of guilt around it. Right, so I'm like, what's wrong with me? Why isn't this enough? And I decided I needed a hobby, and started just crafting for fun initially. And then people were asking, if I would make them things. So back then, what was really popular was wreath making and like decorating bears for like brides and things like that. It was
Yeah.
so much fun. I enjoyed doing it until people started asking me for money. But I had made a relationship with a local store owner. She owned a craft store here. And it was great because she loved the work that I was doing. I got involved in rubber stamping and was amassing quite a collection of product,
Yeah.
if you can imagine. So I started teaching craft classes at her store. It was so much fun. And she introduced me to an entirely different world, the world of craft and hobby. And soon I became a professional craft designer, which I didn't even know was a thing. Did you know that was even a thing?
I've never heard of that, so please tell me what that is.
So a professional craft designer is somebody who gets paid to craft, but instead of working with consumers, like doing little craft fairs and things like that, or having an Etsy shop, I worked with manufacturers like Velcro or Elmer's, or there were tons of little small types of stores. And I could do anything from project creation to product design to product testing. I would teach for manufacturers at trade shows, booth design. I would make projects that would go into booths that would um, be used to showcase new products that were coming up. There was
That is
also
so cool.
it is cool and it was fun. I like diversity because I get bored really easily.
Same
So,
girl. Are you a 7 on the Enneagram by any chance?
I'm not sure. I don't think I've
Oh,
taken an
goodness.
Enneagram. I'm gonna have to. I really do. I love anything that's personality indicators.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I am a Gemini, if that makes a difference.
Okay,
So,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
oh no, that's totally fine. That's what I love so much about having conversations like this. You just got to go with the flow. Um,
exactly.
so, so it was loads of fun because it fit right in with my personality. Right, having the diversity, having the freedom to set my own hours when I would do project work. And during that time when I started, there was no World Wide Web. So wrap your head around that. There was no internet,
How do
no
you
blogs, nothing
how do
like
you
that.
even communicate with people?
So, well, back then you picked up the phone and
I
you
know, it's
communicated
crazy.
that way, right? Right. And you didn't ask permission to call people, you just called them. You made appointments, you showed up. Once email started to come around, which was right about then, email was like way before any of the things that we can do now on the internet, right? There's no Zoom back then, no
Mhm.
Skype and those kinds of things. So, you just had
We
your
had chat rooms,
conversation.
and that's about it.
Yes, that was about it. So it was like really kind of like the very tip of the internet becoming a thing. But during that time, even though I did many, many things within the craft and hobby industry, I had to pivot a lot. And that meant that certain things started to dry up once the internet came around, like pay for print. Once publishers realized they could reach consumers directly and get projects for free, they stopped looking for professionals because why pay us when they can get things for free, right?
Ah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so constantly I was pivoting until I went from just the creative endeavor, to embracing my inner geek. I got into web design and social media marketing, and I was doing a lot more marketing and started to bring those skills into craft and hobby. And then the last several years of that, I mean, that in itself is a whole episode. but during that career, um, I just learned a lot. And in about 2011, a couple of my designer colleagues reached out and they said, "Hey, we really want to start a free online craft magazine. And here's how we plan to monetize it. This is the piece that's missing. I mean, we all had the creative piece, but each of us had a specific skill set. And what they were looking for from me was more that, social media marketing, email marketing, web design piece that I would bring in. And so we did that, and it was during that particular time in my life where I was still trying to do my design business, but there wasn't as much. By that point, I was more consulting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the craft magazine that actually found myself working crazy 16-hour days, sometimes more than that. I had horrible insomnia because I couldn't turn my creative brain off. I was always worried that I was going to forget something. So I would, if I could get to sleep, then I'd wake up like 20 minutes later with like the laundry list
Panic.
in my head.
Yep.
So yeah, it was insane. It was
Yeah.
really insane.
Wow.
It was a very low point, because when you're working like that so hard and burning the candle at both ends and in the middle, it affects everything in your life.
Everything.
100%. And it was tough. So it wasn't, it was during that time in my life, I kind of call them the dark days, where I learned what I was made of and did a lot of hard looking at myself in order to say, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? I'm so unhappy. This isn't going to work. And how do I fix it? And that led me to my whole productivity journey. And it eventually led me to leave craft and hobby completely and start my own coaching business, helping other business owners kind of like focus on what's most important in their life and in their business so that they can grow and prosper and do so without making themselves sick and tired.
Yes, I totally love that. I actually tell this story a lot that when I was working for a corporate company, I super duper loved my job so much. And I really was only there 8, 9 hours a day, but it was so far away from home that I would literally be running nonstop from 5 a.m. when I woke up to hurry and rush out the door to get to work by 7 so I could leave at 4 so I could sit in a bunch of traffic so I could get home and deal with my kids at a decent time and get them to their extracurricular activities. And so I would rush from 5 a.m. to like 8 p.m. every day, it
Right.
felt like. And it just, my blood pressure was through the roof. And I was like, I loved my job, but I was not emotionally, healthily, totally burned out and just felt like I was crashing. And that's when I realized, like, man, it doesn't matter how awesome this thing is. If it kills you, it's not worth it. So I love that you said that you realize I can't keep doing this. I got to figure out how to do it better. So tell me a little bit about how did you start moving away from 16-hour days and total insomnia? Like, what are some things that you started to put into place that really helped you step back from that?
Well, I think for me, it actually started from what I call like that pivotal moment. And for me, what it was was just the realization that I'd built something that I didn't want.
That's
And
big.
yeah, it's big. And I think it's hard for women, and particularly if you're a mom, because it adds a different layer. Like, and some of it is also my personality type. And how do I explain this best? I think it's best just to start with what led me to start thinking different,
Yeah,
and then we can go from there. So
for sure.
in 2013, I was, fully entrenched in the publishing company, and it was going a 4-day weekend was coming. My husband's a teacher. My kids were going to be off from school. They for this 4-day break, and they wanted to go visit friends in Maine. And they're like, "Oh yeah," the kids were excited, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, 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 just go." I can't go. I don't know why you think I could go to something like that. In my head, I'm thinking, I can't leave for 4 or 5 days. I have work to do. And I was excited, believe it or not, I was excited at the thought of having a quiet, empty house for a long period of time. And this was going to be great, right? I was going to catch up on all the things that I was behind on and maybe even get ahead. And then I would have dug myself out of the big giant hole that I had put myself into.
Oh,
Right. So they went and they went without me. And I remember waving goodbye. I tell this story all the time and I can feel it in my body, right in my heart area, like it happened yesterday.
oh
And I
my
waved
gosh.
goodbye. I came back into the house and I stood in the living room. And I just remember standing there quiet for what seemed like forever. It was probably only a few seconds. And I realized what I'd done and I just started to bawl. And I'm like, this isn't what I wanted. This wasn't the reason why I started my business. And
Right.
what I was telling myself is, I'm teaching my daughters that you can be a strong, independent woman and the relationships you have should be a choice. You shouldn't feel trapped, right? You're capable. What I was really teaching them in that moment, what I realized is that my business was more important than they were.
Yeah.
And that hurt because the hardest place to look when something's wrong is at
Is
yourself.
that yourself? Oh, yes. I know. This is coming at the perfect time for me cuz I feel like I'm right in that spot right now.
Right.
So I'm your
So there's
story is
guilt
just
all the time. There's
yeah,
guilt, right?
total
You feel guilty when you're paying attention to your business. You feel guilty because you feel like you're neglecting your family. And when you're paying attention to your family, you feel guilty because you're neglecting your business. But
yeah.
it doesn't have to be that way. So I read the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller during this time. And it was it was during that reading that it occurred to me that I needed to think differently about what I was doing. And trust me, it was a lot of trial and error on my own, you know, one step forward, 10 steps back,
Right.
then, 2 steps forward and 5 steps back until I was able to flip that around. And what I discovered was that what I needed to do first was less. Instead of trying to do more and having the mindset that in order to be more successful, I had to work more. I had to work harder. I had to work longer hours. I had to take bigger risks. And what if that wasn't the case? What if I just stopped listening to everybody else and comparing myself and just said, what's going to work for me? What do I want my life to look like? What do
Yes.
I want to do? And this isn't, I'm going to say some things today that may inspire people. But the truth of the matter is that there's no cookie cutter. There's no one size fits all. That's a myth. It's about what do you want and then not being afraid to be different and to putting things in place for what fits best in your life with your family, with what you want. And it starts with fixing one thing at a time. You can't wake up tomorrow and say, today I'm going to be different. I'm going to do everything
Right.
different today, because it doesn't work that way. It works with starting small, because slow progress beats no progress.
Amen. I actually say this a lot that you can't change everything at one time. You have to pick one thing and go all in on that one thing until you get that one done. And of course, it will trickle out to other things, but you can't, change your health and grow your business and, you know, read 1,000 books and like do all the things and be like this, you know, crazy amazing you can be crazy amazing, but you can't just like be a completely different person overnight. You got
That's
to take
true.
it a little bit at a time. So I love that you said that. And actually, man, I got chills all over and tears in my eyes I'm a very emotional person. When you said that you read the book, The One Thing, I have a lot of self esteem and a lot of books that I need to read. But one of the books that I bought was The One Thing. And I actually, for some reason, that book jumped out at me the other day. And it's just a weird synchronicity. And I think it's really cool. And it just made me feel like, holy cow, this resonates so much with me, and it feels so eerily similar. So
It's a great book because some of the things that, like, there's a section of the book where they talk about myths, right? These are the things that we hear from society. And when in reading those, it gave me a lot of validation because I didn't listen to myself. And I think that's really important for everybody listening today. Listen to yourself and trust your judgment. So when I felt that the direction I was taking was wrong, or that I should be doing something differently, I didn't listen. I'm like, well, everybody else does it like this, so that's how I should do it. And I didn't say, you know, what works best for me and my personality type and with my desires for all the areas of my life, because I'm not just my work. And the other thing too is I hid a lot in my work. So the first thing, after that pivotal moment, the first thing I tried to fix was business. Like, how do I squeeze this 10 hours into 2? How can I be
right.
more productive? And I found out really quickly that you can't. And I was also exhausting myself. And besides the insomnia, I didn't stop to eat. I lived on coffee. And 3 o'clock would roll around and I'd be like, why can't I focus on anything? Well, I was starving myself half to death. There were many
Right.
days I didn't stop to shower. How gross is that? But that's what I was doing. That's what I was doing to myself. So it was really several months in when I realized all the business stuff wasn't working that I was trying to fix. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I should start with myself. What's the one thing for now that I should be focused on? And I personally started with sleep. And
Okay.
how do I make how do I fix this so that, I don't need to take a sleep aid, because I was always afraid of those things. I know some people figure that's the quick, easy answer, and it may be,
Right.
but it's like I was concerned about like things like addiction. So I'm like, I wasn't interested in that. I
Yeah.
tried melatonin, that stuff didn't work. So what I started doing was just putting a bedtime routine together, and I set certain rules, those non-negotiables. Like I wasn't allowed to bring a device into my bedroom. Um, that
How did
and
you break
it,
that habit?
it starts with little steps. So tiny steps forward. So it wasn't like, okay, today I'm not bringing my phone in. So I would have my phone and my iPad in my bedroom. And before I would I'd be in the bed swiping through, and usually I was looking at work stuff. So it
Yeah.
started with, okay, I'm not allowed to look at work stuff once I'm in the bedroom. And then it started with, I'm not allowed to bring my iPad in the bedroom. Right. And it was like every few days, something new. The
Yeah.
phone, right? Because the excuse we make excuses, and as soon as we hit resistance to something. The big one is the cell phone. Well, I can't not have my cell phone in my bedroom. It's my alarm clock. Well, I got an alarm clock.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
now there's
that's so
no
easy to fix.
things are easy to fix. We it's like that's a whole other story. We let me go back on here about the sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to find this a lot. My brain works faster than my mouth, and I interrupt
Same.
myself constantly.
Me too.
so it was just certain things like, okay, so my non-negotiables now are no devices. um I am in my bed by a certain amount of time. I am I don't look at a computer for like at least 2 hours before I'm ready to go to sleep, because the you know your screen is your enemy. It
Right.
it
Totally.
really Right. So, I have blue light glasses and things like that, but that's half the problem. It stimulates my brain. And therefore, then my brain starts zooming around, zipping from thought to thought to thought, and things occur to me and I get excited and then I can't get to sleep. Right. So
Yep.
if I read before I go to sleep, and it has to be a book that I can hold. It can't be on a device. So there's no, um, like there's no listening to Audible before I go to bed, and there's no Kindle or anything like that. It has to be something, a magazine or a book or something that I hold. It helps me settle down and get to sleep. And just the different routines that I've put in place over the years foster my going to sleep. And now I get about 7 hours of good sleep a night. It makes a huge difference in my productivity because I'm
Yeah.
rested, right? Other
And
things
your
like,
brain is working better and your brain works a little faster when
it
when
does
you
for
have enough
sure,
sleep. Yeah.
right? And then, once I was, it was like the one domino, you tip it over and then everything else gets better. And you have to figure out what that is for you. Like if you're already
Yeah.
getting really good sleep, but you're not hydrated, start drinking water. And what can you do to remove the resistance around those things? Those are some of the productivity things that I do. Another really good book is Atomic Habits by
I
James Clear.
love that book.
That's a
Oh,
great book, really helpful in the concepts that he shares. Having the right habits and rituals vastly affects your productivity.
yes.
And how I set up my morning routine is affected by what I do the night before. If I don't run my like my evening routine, it affects the type of morning I'm going to have, and I know that. And so, these are things now that are just habit. I don't think about what I have to do, I just do them. Except for the occasional monkey wrench, right? So if I'm out and about and I'm not home and I'm not doing, because we went out to dinner and we're with friends, or I'm traveling, I have to figure out how I'm going to make it work so that I can have some of my morning routine when I'm out of my house, for example. Or
Oh,
when,
yeah.
you know, if I know in the morning, I mentally prepare myself by saying, okay, when I come downstairs, you know, I know I didn't make the coffee last night before I went to bed. So I have to do that. And just even that tiny little thing can throw me off if I don't say to myself, okay, just do that and then get right back into your routine.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, those things are very helpful.
You sound a lot like me, and I have a really hard time with routines and schedules and things like that because I just have a really hard time sticking to them. And I love that you give yourself grace and say, it's okay. Let's just do the thing that you would normally do and then get back on the horse and so to speak,
Right.
and go ahead and
Consistency
continue.
is tough. Every
Oh,
fiber
it's
of my
so
being
hard.
fights the schedule. Right. So again,
Same.
you have to figure out what works for you. And so, like, I journal every day. If I've missed a morning, if I've missed a morning because something came Friday mornings, I have a networking meeting that I go to. My morning routine's slightly different. I don't have time in the morning to journal. Um, it's one of the things that, well, I'll do it later in the day, or some days I don't do it at all. But as long as I'm not doing it 2 days in a row and then 3 days in a row, I'm not
Right.
creating a new habit. So it's not about beating yourself up. It's looking at whatever has kind of like gunked up the mix there. And I'm like, okay, this is this, but this isn't what defines me. Tomorrow is a new chance to start again. And sometimes it's even, minute by minute. We've all woken up in those bad moods, and then it can affect your whole day if you let it. So it's a matter of
Yeah.
recognizing and being aware, and then having some tricks up your sleeve to adjust the mood. If whatever it is, whether it's meditation, going for a walk and stretching, pay attention. It's not about being an automaton where you have to be so rigid and strict. Especially I'm at a different season of my life because my children are grown. I have one out of the house, one in college. So I don't have little kids that I'm getting ready in the morning that are going to change, you know, what is actually going to happen, right? But I've had a business during every stage of child development, so I know the things that can come up, right? Your kid gets sick, they're going to be home for the day, changes what's going to happen. You just kind of have to go with the flow and not beat yourself up and get rid of the negative self-talk. Oh, that's the worst part ever. When you start beating yourself up in your own brain, you got to stop that.
Yeah. Or, you tell yourself like, "Oh, I'm not consistent, so I just stink at this," or whatever. It's like, "No, you can still be consistent." It's don't like you said, don't tell yourself that. Just get back to it. So I think that's so valuable. I actually wrote down how rigid is your schedule, and then you kind of touched on it, so that worked out really perfectly. Um,
Mine is not. Every fiber of my being, like I said, fights a schedule. I am I like flow. I like to be able to freely flow. Like if a colleague calls me up, and I have lots of entrepreneur friends around here, I'm like, hey, you want to go to lunch? I want to be able to do that. My freedom and flexibility is very important to me. But I know what has to happen every single day in my business in order to move me forward. And because I want to have the ability, I leave the wiggle room in my schedule.
Yeah, I love that. So tell me how many hours on average you work a week.
Um, well, I don't work 16 to 18 hours a day anymore. I can tell you
That's
that.
fantastic, of course.
So, my workday starts really early because my mornings are my best time of day. And once I recognize that, I stopped fighting it. So I get a lot done, a lot more done in a shorter amount of time because now I utilize my best hours to get the most important things done in my business. So I would say I probably work about 5 hours a day.
Yeah.
And
I I mean, I
days
think
that I
if
see clients, it's a little bit longer,
yeah.
but it doesn't my client one-to-ones don't feel like work to me. So, there are conversations I'm having with my coaching clients and helping them problem solve and set their goals and figure out what their achievement path is to get to the finish line on those. So those are the things that I find exciting. They light me up and recharge me. So yeah, I don't work more than that typically, and I don't work weekends anymore. Although on occasion I'll put in a couple of hours on a Saturday morning because nobody else is up. It's quiet and I'm not
And you
working
want
all
to.
day. Yeah, I want to, and that's a good thing to do. So like you have your non-negotiables. But sometimes you have to dip into those things. So I'm going to be launching a course a little later on this year, and I know that during launch I'm going to have to work on a weekend. And as
Right.
long as I'm not doing that every weekend, I'm okay with it.
Yes. I would totally agree with that. I think the trouble that you get into is, like you said, when you're working every Saturday and Sunday and you're not spending time with your family and they're annoying you that they exist while you're trying to run a business. Because that's sort of kind of where I'm at right now. And yeah, I mean, the whole reason that we typically start businesses is to spend more time with our family, to have that freedom. And so it makes no stinking sense to bind yourself to your desk with your business and end up working more than you would in a corporate job. Like that's not why you started
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
It's so funny you say that. Like, this is like the number one complaint I hear is that, I left my corporate job or I left my teaching job or I left this job because I wanted to work for myself and make more money and work less. And what's happening now is I'm working more and I'm making less money. And
Yeah.
so it becomes a problem. But here's the thing when it comes to family, because I resonate so much with what you just said. It's like your family's like, hey, we're here and we want to spend time with you. And it's just like, "Ugh, stop bothering me. I really need to get this stuff done." But
Yeah.
the one thing I think that I did wrong early on was that I didn't communicate well. And I because my background's in teaching and I taught elementary school, like I don't really see kids as not being able to understand things. It's
Right.
like, do what I tell you. There's an age appropriate way to speak to your children so they understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And it's also good for you to understand why you're doing what you're doing and then communicate that with your family. I mean, communication is key. It doesn't always work. So quick story is an example for that. My husband was building me a closet. It was the end of the summer. It was August. Wasn't back to school yet, but he was building me a closet in the basement, which acts of service is my love language. So that was awesome.
Yep.
So he's building me this closet, and I was getting ready to go on a Facebook Live. It was a beautiful day here in New York. I had all the windows open in the house, and I made a point. I usually, if I'm in a meeting or I'm recording, I have a sticky note on my door that I put on that says what I'm doing, and then he'll remember not to knock on the door because sometimes he forgets. So I'm like, I'm going to go communicate with him that I'm going on this Facebook Live and that I'm going to need about 20 minutes of like quiet, and can he not bang in the closet? And he was like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll do something else. And let me know when you're done. And I still went and put the sticky note on the door and closed the door in case he forgot when he came upstairs. And here I am. I'm about 7 minutes into this live, and he starts cutting the metal shelves that he had, like those great shelves, underneath the window where I of my office. And I'm just like, okay, I didn't communicate. Like my initial thought was, of course, I laughed because I was on live, and I'm like, well, welcome to real life. And my first initial instinct was to like get ticked off. I'm like,
Right.
he didn't listen. And then I realized I didn't communicate well. So how I'm always looking, how can I communicate better? Even with the kids, when my initial instinct when my little one would come off the bus and run in the house because they would get dropped off right in front of the house, and she'd come in, I'd leave the front door open, she'd run in and she'd be like, mommy, mommy, mommy. And if I was in the middle of something, I'd yell,
Yeah.
and then I feel horrible about it. And over time, as I was going through all of this, I realized she completely understood. Hey, honey, I really excited to hear what you have to tell me. I just need to finish this sentence, and then I'll be right with you. And she would be okay. And she was learning patience, right? And I
Yeah.
wasn't yelling at her and teaching her that she couldn't talk to me. So, then my actions to support that was to finish whatever it was that I was typing. And if I needed to make a note for myself, I would close my computer screen and say, okay, I'm all yours.
I
And then I
love
can go
that.
back to work. So it's like communicating, explaining that, how when you get homework and if you didn't do your homework, your teacher would get mad at you and you would like get detention or whatever, there'd be a consequence. Well, if I don't get this done for my client, then X, Y, and Z happens. These are things that kids can understand. So it's important to communicate and not think that they won't understand what you're doing. It doesn't mean that they'll always be patient, but it's a start of better communication that will take actually spill out into other things in their life and for you as well. You get better at communicating. They get better at communicating, not just with you, but with other people.
Yes, I totally agree. I feel like communication is the one thing that if we could work on and learn to do it honestly and lovingly, I feel like those are the two what's the word I'm looking for? Uh,
They're
the
elements, I think, right?
Yeah, two major elements to communication. If you can do it lovingly and honestly, it changes everything in every single relationship that you have. Communication is so big, and when I talk to my girlfriends or I talk to my business friends or whatever, and we talk about kids or husbands or whatever. It's like just talk to them, just tell them what you need, tell them honestly and lovingly how you're feeling, and that I'm a huge, huge, huge proponent of that communication because I've seen the change that it's had in my own marriage. And
Mm-hmm.
it's huge. It's so massive. And not only just my marriage, but like my relationship with my parents or my siblings or whatever. And it's just so important. So I'm so glad that you brought that up and made it such a sticking point as far as how you can um, let your family know when you need to have that time to focus, and then but also balance it with, okay, now I'm done, now I'm all yours. I think that's so powerful.
Right. Right. So I love that, what you were just saying, especially it just helps everywhere. Like, especially with people that are not entrepreneurs don't understand. And, we kind of speak our own language, right? And we tend to find each other. I know I have lots of other like
Yes.
colleagues, acquaintances, and friends, and they are also entrepreneurs, and they understand the things that I'm talking about. My husband, even though I've been an entrepreneur so long, still doesn't get some things, but
Yeah.
he's more patient because he's seen the growth that I've had because I approached my business differently than I used to. Like,
Yeah.
he was upset for me in those days when I was working those crazy hours and not sleeping, and because I was also during that time angry and
Yep.
sad a lot. And learning to let go of the things that weren't serving me anymore was hard work. And during that time, because I had business partners in the publishing company, letting go of that and being worried that they wouldn't love me anymore because I didn't want to do it. I needed to move on from that and exit. And I held on for like another year of that, afraid to tell them, right? And that goes back to that communication piece. And when I remember it was January of 2017, I'd already started my coaching business. And here I was putting myself back in the place of having two businesses again. And, you know, I could see really quickly what was going to happen if I didn't make a change. And I'm like, why am I still holding on to this? I have to talk to them. So going back
Yeah.
to the communicating, and I remember, you know, being on a Zoom with them, and I'm like, guys, I can't do this anymore. And they're like, oh, we know. It's like they already saw it and they were patient and waiting for me to come to them
Oh, wow.
with that. And we put an exit strategy because I didn't want to leave them stuck. And my plan was to stay through December of that year. And we got to a place where they were good by September. So I got out an extra 3 months earlier.
That's so
And they're
nice.
still my great friends, so it's like it worked out well for me. But it's not always going to be the case. There's going to be some people that aren't going to come with you where you want to go.
True, but I think it's very important to point out that because you lovingly and honestly went and talked to them, they are still your really good friends, and you can still have that relationship even though you felt like you were maybe letting them down by having to step down. They, of course, if they're your friends, they care a lot about you and they want the best for you. So when you can lovingly and honestly communicate that and just say, I love you guys so much, but I just got to take care of me, then who wouldn't? You know what I mean? Who wouldn't?
Oh
Who
yeah.
wouldn't be able to respond to that and say, "Hey, man, I totally know." I, I
Hmm.
respect that. So I think that's great.
The other thing to think about is if for anybody listening, if there's a situation like that that you're afraid of hurting somebody, you're hurting them anyway. Because
You're
even though
keeping it to
I
yourself
you're keeping it to
and
yourself
driving yourself
because
mad.
well, if you're frustrated and angry, it comes out, even if you don't think it is and you're hiding it well.
Yep.
Things that wouldn't have normally annoyed me, because people, right? We annoy each other,
Yep.
right? So
Totally.
things were getting on my nerves that weren't getting on my nerves before, but now all of a sudden they were becoming big deals, and I may not have been articulating them, but I was feeling them, and I know that I was projecting it, probably in my attitude. And we were in three different states, but we were on Zoom. I'm sure they could see it in my body language and hear the tension in my voice, and it wasn't good for them. So it's not
Mhm.
fair to keep that information to yourself. you have to talk about those things. And
Yeah.
it's not fair to yourself to stay in a situation or to keep doing things that don't serve you or move you forward or that just keep you feeling miserable.
Yes. I I love that. Totally agree. And that make you crazy, right? Like there's no
Mhm.
reason you have to do stuff that absolutely makes you super stressed or feel burned out and all those things. Like there's plenty of things to do in the world. You don't have to do the things that make you feel like that.
Yes, 100%. I recently, have been concentrating on list building in my business, and I was brainstorming all the different ways that I could, get more people to my email list, right? And to
Mhm.
say that yes, and what do I want to do? And I just brainstormed all the things that I could do, and this is a great productivity tip also, because like at least I think so. Like for example, one of the things on the list was to do an online summit. Just the idea of doing one, um, knowing how much work goes into it, and the fact that I have to probably chase people to get the things that I want just makes me shrink.
Yeah.
It makes me
Yeah.
shrink, and it makes me, maybe makes me a little queasy, and I'm like, okay, that's something I should not do. It might be a
Right.
great idea for somebody else, but for me and my personality type, I'll procrastinate around it. It'll take
Yep.
me longer to do it, and that's not productive. It's not a good use of my time, and I won't be effective, which is I think the most important part of productivity is what you're doing effective and more than efficient. Efficiency is awesome, but if you're being efficient at the wrong things, then
You're not
what's
effective.
the point, right? Exactly. So that won't
Yes,
move
I
me
love
forward
it.
either. No.
I love that too because actually before I decided to start the podcast, I was working on becoming an OBM. And I love operations and productivity and efficiency and effectiveness and all those things. So, yeah, I think that that is such the key. There's so much talk around efficiency and automation and all these things. But if it's not actually having an effect, then why the heck are you doing it? That's one reason that uh, my view with Live with Audacity is challenge everything. Challenge everything.
Right.
People always say, like, I can't do this because I have to do this. Okay, but why? Why can't someone help you? Or why do you have to do that? Or, and it's just,
Yep.
it drives me mad that we put ourselves in these boxes and I can't do that because I have to do this. But like challenge everything. Like why do you have to do that thing? Why can't someone else do it? Why can't especially if it's something that just drags you down and makes you feel so heavy and have disdain, right? Uh,
Uh-huh.
get those things out of your life
Yes.
immediately.
Yes. There's always another way. And it, you
And
have
there's
it's
always
fun,
someone
man.
else that would enjoy doing it, right?
Like,
Like more than
and don't
you.
be afraid to ask
So
for help.
totally. Yeah, I think that comes back to the communication thing too is like you can't expect your family or your spouse or friends to know what you need if you don't have the audacity to tell them and ask them. And again, if you can do it in a loving and honest way, then you're already home free.
Right, right. And a lot of people don't I'm not a big fan of conflict, but don't let that deter you from having those conversations, because it doesn't have to be in a way that starts a fight or an argument, or makes you lose a friendship. It's not about blaming somebody else. When you're when
Yes.
you're when you're having those conversations, it's about you and your feeling. And you know like, I know there have been many times when I've rephrased something that my husband said, or maybe he's done, and he's like, well, I didn't, and I'll tell him this is how I feel, and he's like, well, I'm not trying to make you feel that way, and I'm like, I know you're not,
Right.
but that I'm telling you that when you do that, it makes me feel like this, even though I know that's not your intention. How
Right.
can we work around this? So like, It's just silly things. And then, of course, realizing when it's important to let things go. So one of my pet peeves is having dishes in the sink. When I come down in the morning to get ready to work, start my day, I don't want anything in my sink. My kitchen is clean when I go to bed, and I want it to come down to a clean kitchen. And I come down and there's like a fork in the sink or a glass, and I'm the dishwasher's like right there, you know. So
Right there.
now, when I was talking earlier about something that affects you and then it affects the rest of your day. So like I would get so angry, and I wouldn't say anything because I think in the back of my head I'm like, this is a ridiculous thing to get angry about.
Right.
But I wasn't there yet to like realize that. And I think the switching point for me, and it didn't matter how much conversation I had around it. Can you please just, I don't like anything in the sink. Please just put in the dishwasher. It doesn't bother me if the dishwasher was running when I went to bed and there was no room, but if it's empty, put it in the dishwasher. So I remember just coming down one morning, I grabbed the glass that was in the sink, and I'm like swearing under my breath, and I'm just like, I can feel myself getting like all worked up. I'm working myself up over a glass, and I looked at it and I'm like, I just remember looking at the glass and I'm like, oh yeah, right. I'm sure that he put this in the sink completely to get to me. And then I just started cracking up at that ridiculous thought. Like he's sitting there rubbing his hands together like
Like,
the evil
oh, I'm
genius
gonna get her.
plotting, right? What can I do to tick her off? It's like, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, that's not happening in reality. And it's just that he thinks differently than I do. Certain
Yeah.
things are important to him that aren't important to me, and vice versa. So I'm like, so I've learned to let that go, and it's made a huge difference.
Well, I think too, yeah, like being able to say, "Hey, this is one of the things that like really sets me off first thing in the morning. If you could make it a priority, it would mean so much to me." And then also following it up with, "Is there anything that I do that makes you feel that way that I can work
Mhm.
on?" And really opening that communication up and saying, "Eh, I need your help with this, but I'm totally on board to help you with something that makes you crazy too, you know?"
Right,
And
right.
then also, I wrote this note down while you were talking. I think it's also okay to say, "Hey, when you say this thing, it makes me feel like this. I need some clarity. What do you actually mean? Do you mean the way that I'm taking it, or do you mean it in a different way?" I think that's also super huge and powerful in communication because my husband and I speak English, but we speak
Yes.
totally different English languages.
Right, exactly.
Totally different. And so we have gotten a lot better at saying, okay, here's what I heard. Is that what you actually meant? And
Right.
it's been so super helpful.
Right, but it's a matter of going and clarifying, right? So, like, when you do that, which is so brilliant, it releases the things that it releases it instead of having you hold on to it and
Yeah.
internalizing it and making it, and that's true of a lot of things. The way we work, the way we approach things, are a lot of our mindsets are around, are born from like those limiting self beliefs, or any of beliefs that we have, for that matter, is an event that happened and then what we made it mean. And so if
Yes.
you have an opportunity to clarify that and then release it and let it go so that it doesn't become a part
Oh,
of
yeah.
your own story and what you're telling yourself, it's critical. So I just,
So, yeah, so critical. I totally agree. Okay, so this has been so incredibly fun, and man, we have covered so much ground. Let's wrap up real quick with a rapid fire. Tell me about a book, article, person, or talk that's changed your life.
okay, this is probably going to almost seem cliche, but when I heard Mel Robbins' 5 second rule TED talk, that changed a lot of things for me, because like I am a guilty procrastinator, and I procrastinate so much less, especially around the things I don't want to do. It's just
Yep.
that 5 4 3 2 1, go for it. It's amazing.
Yes, I totally agree. I actually, it's funny. If I had to peg you for a seven, I think you're a seven all day long. And so, I've sort of kind of listen to that TED Talk, but I'm going to go back and listen to it again because I have a feeling that everything that you've mentioned today, the one thing, and obviously Atomic Habits, I love. I feel like I need to pay more attention to that 5 second rule thing so that I can overcome it because I just feel like we're so in sync as far as what our struggles are. So it's on my list. I'm going to do that today.
Awesome.
Tell Tell me about your favorite Friday night at home with either your husband or your family.
Oh, my favorite Friday nights are I'm really a homebody. I just am. And if I can sit up and binge watch some Netflix and crochet, I like to crochet. That's the one crafty thing that I kept when I exited out of the craft and hobby industry. I like to crochet. It's fun, it's relaxing, it helps me reduce stress. So
Yeah,
just kind of like sitting with a project and working on that while I'm watching some TV with hubby and spending time together, that's perfect for me.
I love that. Okay, what was your dream job as a kid?
Oh, from when I was tiny, all I ever wanted to be was a teacher. And
Oh,
and oh yeah, I would play teacher. I would like collect anything that would you might find in a teacher's classroom. And if they were getting rid of like extra workbooks when I was a little girl, I would take them home and then I would play with my dolls and set up classrooms. And then I became a teacher. And I would say, even though I'm not formally in a classroom anymore, teaching is just part of what I do, which so it's been a natural progression for to consulting and to coaching
yeah.
and doing um, presentations and things like that. So
Yeah, I love
that was my
that.
dream job.
I love it when the dream job correlates exactly to what you do now. I think that's so cool. um, Tell me about the next vacation that you're planning.
We really, really want to go to New Orleans. We've not been. And have you ever been?
I've never been, and it is literally on my vision board for this year. No joke.
That's fantastic. Okay, I think
I'll
we're
meet you there.
soulmates.
Oh my god, I love that so much. What are you looking most forward to in New Orleans?
um, the music. My husband's a musician. He's a music teacher, and he
Oh,
still
that's so
he still
cool.
gigs. He still plays in a few bands. I really just want to see the music while I'm there. I really am excited about that part.
That's so great. Mine is food. I can't wait to eat the food.
The food's good too. I will say, but yeah, that I've wanted to go for many many years. So we're going to do that this year.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. And seriously, you might have to tell me when so I can meet you there.
Cool. All right.
What is your best advice for living with audacity?
Do you? You don't have to be like anyone else. We're all so different, and trying to make yourself fit into a box that you don't feel like you fit in, don't do it.
Yes.
Figure out what works best for you. Don't listen to other people. Put your blinders on and trust yourself.
Yep. I totally, totally agree. And it's the whole premise of Live with Audacity. So that is perfect. Where can people find you to get more information about you and everything that you do?
Well, you can visit teresacifali.com, and I've got a great blog there. So I tend to blog about, of course, productivity, organization, outsourcing, goal setting and achievement, and time management. So if you're struggling in any of those areas, there's probably a blog article there for you.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it so much. And of course, I will put that in the show links and everything else that we've talked about today. Teresa, oh my gosh, I am crazy about you already. And I can't wait for everyone to hear this. Thank you so, so much for coming on the podcast and talking with me today. I really super enjoyed it.
Me too. I'm so grateful that you gave me the opportunity to come and hang out with you today.
Hey, y'all, I had to jump in here real quick because I need a favor. If you are loving the Live with Audacity podcast, I need you to do me a big solid favor and share it with your friends, share it on social media, and go to the Apple iTunes link and click subscribe, rate it, review it. I need to know your feedback, and I want to keep putting this out for you, so I really need your help to get the message out. Thank you so much for your loyalty and your super kind and sweet words. They mean so terribly much to me.